why I really couldn't memorize all of that impressive resume compared to mine. Tonight she's going to give us insights as to how we step into our power. So please help me in welcoming Susan Tardanico.
Okay, so seriously, you deserve a gold star. I don't know if you did some investigating, or maybe she went to Sweden. She came back a linguist, because she's the only person in about a year who has gotten my last name right. So excellent. She's Italian, that's what it is. So it is such a mouthful, you know, Tardanico. It's got the 4-syllable thing going. It's got the Italian thing going. And I can't tell you how much I hated that name growing up. It was like, I hated it as a kid, really hated it as a reporter. But what really got me was when I realized that other people hated it too. So there I am interviewing for my second corporate job in Massachusetts. And I got through round after round of interviews, and I'm in the final round, and I'm talking with the president. So we're sitting across the table, it's Paul Hoffman. It's Dr. Paul Hoffman, lest you forget. So he takes up my resume and he's like, Tarda, what? I said, what the hell kind of name is that? And I said, it's Italian. And he said, oh. So then he asked me, you know, why I was interested in relocating to Lowell, Massachusetts, which is where the job was. And I said I was getting married and my fiance lived in the area. So Dr. Hoffman perked right up. And he said, well, what's his last name? I said, it's Gillette, you know, like the razor blade. And he said, oh, so you're going to change your name? And I said, yeah. And he's like, oh, thank God, what a relief. Now, you know, I might have hated my long, ethnic, crazy last name, but this guy's disdain for it, like took on a power of its own, you know? So anyway, I got married, and the marriage was a mistake. But the name was a gift, or at least I thought so. So long after the divorce is over, I am clinging to Susan Gillette. I mean, I'm talking years after the divorce is over. It's like holding on to Susan Gillette, fearful that the rest of the world was going to think what Paul Hoffman thought. And then something changed all of that. My dad died suddenly, and he left my mom, a wife, 4 of us daughters, and a son. Well, each of my sisters had already married, and they had taken their husband's last name. And I realized that there weren't many Tardanicos left, you know? So then it just sort of hit me, like, I am Susan Tardanico, and I have to be me. It was sort of one of those defining moments when I had to release that fear that the rest of the world would think what Paul Hoffman thought. And I needed to just say, I am me, and kind of need to stand in that place, you know? It is amazing, the power that we give to other people, isn't it? I mean, it's almost like we get addicted to the approval of other people. And freedom comes when we release all of that. So I'm wondering what it is that you might be failing to embrace about you. I'm wondering how you might be feeling just a little less than adequate because you're concerned about what other people might think. So here's some examples. I don't have a big title, so I am less than. I am a divorced single mom and I can't possibly work 24/7. So I am less than. I don't have an MBA or an Ivy League degree. So I am less than. I have a bizarre ethnic last name. So I am less than. Think about how you might be viewing yourself as less than. Because it's time to bring it into the whole you. The wonderful you. The powerful you. You know, when you think about what we do as consultants, we advise, we guide, we help people run their businesses, we help them manage change, we help them be better leaders. I mean, when you think about the magnitude of that responsibility, you can see how vital it is that we are in our power, that we bring the best of ourselves to the party. In fact, our clients are kind of depending on that, aren't they? Yeah. I mean, they don't want the second best of us. They're paying for the very best of us. So tonight we could talk about so many things pertaining to women's leadership. You know, there are such broad and complex issues surrounding this topic, from sort of systemic to cultural and everything in between. And in fact, earlier today, I think you touched on some of that with your inclusion session. But that's not at all what tonight's about. Tonight is kind of a venture inside, as it were. It's about your authenticity. It's about your voice. As consultants, as leaders, as human beings. So as consultants, I would say, we are all in the relationship business. Would you agree? Cece? Yeah. We're all in the relationship business, and you think about it, every client is built one relationship at a time. Our businesses are built one relationship at a time. Our careers, right, are built one relationship at a time. And to be solid in relationship, you need to be solid in yourself. How many of us have heard that saying, you know, to love somebody else, you must first love yourself? Who's heard of that one? Yeah. We've all heard of that one. It's a truism for a reason, and the same thing kind of applies to leadership. You know, to lead others well, you need to first lead yourself. And that's from a place of centeredness, a place of self-awareness, personal power. And by that, I don't mean power over other people. I mean power that springs from sort of the very core of who you are, your authenticity, right? So tonight, I'd like to share with you 4 simple truths that will help you kind of embrace who you are, step into your authenticity, and in turn, step into your power. There are 4 things that I've learned through various stages of my own career journey. I've reinvented myself a few times, learned a ton along the way, through defining moments, really. You know, moments that just literally hit you between the eyes and you go, whoa. Sometimes it's only in retrospect that you understand the full magnitude of what's just taken place. So these 4 simple truths are to let go of limiting beliefs, make choices that are aligned with who you are, leverage the power of your intuition and your intellect, and stand in your own inherent worth. 4 simple things. So before I get into that, we're just going to do a little temperature check. This is an odd time of day to be doing this. And I just like shows of hands. How many of you have been at it already today for 8, 10, or more hours? Hands up, 8, 10, or more hours. Great. How many of you have had a glass of alcohol or 2? Raise your hands. Okay, excellent. How many of you have just eaten? Here we go. Okay, so let me get this straight. So you're tired, you're feeling a little relaxed, all your food is going to your stomach, you're in a warm room, sitting down, you're actually fanning yourself. We're in a warm room. And now for the next 45 minutes or so, you're going to be listening to a single person talk. In the world of speakers, this is called the death zone. Okay? Seriously? Because your audience is either already dead or it's going to be dead. So anyway, when I found out about my slot, I said to Sally, you know what? Let's ditch the PowerPoints. Let's just try to make this thing a conversation. And so what I decided to do was to take these 4 principles and bring them to life for you through stories, and then a few lessons. And I'd like to try to keep this as engaging and interactive as possible. If you guys are feeling yourselves dozing off, please send me a signal. I'll do something. I don't know what that is, but maybe I'll try to do something. But I do appreciate that this is a very tough time of day for you all, and so we'll try to keep it light. Now, at the end of this, we've left a good half hour, 40 minutes or so, for open dialogue. Between you, between us, whatever it is that moves you. So as we go through this, if things spring to mind that you want to revisit, you want to talk about, jot it down, because we will have time in the end. Sound like a plan? Sound like a plan? Okay, and I love the fact that this is so intimate. I mean, I'm going to try to roam around, but it's great just having a small group of women, because I think you'll find when we get to that section of interaction, you can have some really meaningful dialogue, which is really what this is all about, right? Okay, so the very first simple truth that I'd like to share with you is the importance of letting go of those limiting beliefs that keep us stuck in place, okay? So just a few years ago, I left a big corporate career and took a leap into my dream, which was to start my own consultancy and speak for a living. Well, conventional wisdom says that anybody wanting to be a speaker has to have a book. Okay? The book is the great credibility builder. It is the great legitimizer. So on a crisp Tuesday morning, I sat down to write the book. And I waited.
How did that go for you?
And I waited. I mean, like this blank computer screen staring back at me. All right. So I said, bad day, shake it off. Came back the next day. Same thing. So no, it wasn't working too well for me. Third day. Ta-da! Nothing. Okay, so weeks and weeks of nothing. So I start buying up every book that I can find on how to get the writing mojo going. And you know what they said? You know what they said? No, they didn't say do something else.
Write about what you know.
What's that?
Write about what you know?
Well, actually, they just said, just start writing. Well, wasn't that the problem? I mean, yeah. So I was like, okay, this isn't working. So full-on panic sets in. And I did what I always do. I went into full attack. I was like, okay, I'm going to research everything under the sun on what it takes to break writer's block. And I learned some really weird things. Okay, so who knows what psilocybin is? Psilocybin. Any guesses? Psilocybin. Sounds like an antibiotic, doesn't it? Psilocybin is a wild mushroom. And it's said that if you make an extract in a tea from this wild mushroom, it's going to break writer's block. So I drank 3 cups a day until I had this epic diarrhea. It was horrible. And you know, the article I read, it said, it's going to get things flowing. It's like so much more than I bargained for. So, attack mode. So some things said, okay, focus on breathing. So I'm breathing and breathing. Some things said, clear your mind. So I focused on clearing my mind. Some things said, creativity comes in the shower. I was like a prude, okay? I considered the marijuana route. Stephen King did it. Charles Dickens did it. And I thought, well, maybe I could do it, but I didn't do it anyway. Everything else I tried didn't work. So I was kind of bummed out, and I was thinking about packing it in. So I talked with a friend about it, and she said, have you ever tried hypnosis? I said, no. And I thought to myself, am I really that desperate? Yes, I was. So I went and I saw hypnotist Mark Ashley. Bless you.
Thank you.
So I walked into Mark Ashley's office, run up, got onto that lazy boy recliner, I laid that baby flat out, and I prepared to go under. Mark wasn't ready to take me there, so he walks over, takes the recliner, puts it back up, and he says, just want to ask you a couple questions. So he asked me why I'm there. And I gave him the story. And then he said, well, why do you think you have to write the book first? And I said, look, it's just the way the industry works. And he said, well, do you think there are any speakers out there who haven't written a book? I said, maybe, but they just got lucky. So then he said, well, do you think there are any best-selling authors out there who are absolute flops as speakers? I said, maybe. So then he said, if somebody called you today and asked you to speak to somebody, speak to a group, would you have anything meaningful to say? Yes, I said. So Mark Ashley sat back, he looked at me long and hard, and then he leaned into me and he said, so what's the harm in giving it a try? Now that sounds pathetically simple, doesn't it? Seriously, but there was something that happened in that moment It's like this wave of energy came through me. It was like the floodgates of opportunity opened. I left his office, and within 2 months, I had my first speaking engagement, and it just went on from there. So my path was altered by a hypnotist who didn't even hypnotize me. I mean, it was ridiculous. He changed my path, and actually, I look back on it now, he changed my life by getting me to reframe, to look at things from a different angle. Not one thing about my circumstance had changed, not one. It was just my belief system about my circumstances that had changed. It's like I had drawn this box around myself, right? And I stayed squarely in it. And all I had to do was start to erase those lines. And it freed me to do what I wanted to do. So I'm wondering what kinds of limiting beliefs you all have about what you need to do, about what you need to have, about what you need to be in order to get what you want. What are the things that are keeping you kind of stuck in place right now? What's your mental model about career progression? Could you be standing in your own way because you've drawn lines, or you've accepted lines that other people have drawn between you and possibility? If the answer is yes, then how can you begin to move away from those limiting beliefs? First, you can admit and accept that your own paradigm may be your greatest challenge right now. Your own belief system. Ask yourself, what are my excuses? What am I really afraid of? Why can't I have whatever it is that you want to have? I don't know how many of you are familiar with a study that McKinsey did last year on unlocking the full potential of women. But, was that a bad word? Oh, I'm so sorry. I was really afraid of that. Anyway, so it said...
Let it slide.
Okay. Anyhow, it validated the fact that limiting beliefs are the single greatest factor holding women back. And they bucketed limiting beliefs into two different buckets. One was the limiting beliefs of those around us. So assumptions about the kinds of work, the kinds of jobs that women can and should do. Mostly staff positions, not line positions, which we all know impacts that whole glass ceiling thing. The second bucket that they deduced was holding women back was their own limiting beliefs. So that's kind of what I'm talking about here. Let me give you an example that was cited in that report. One of us feels like we want to go for a job. The job sounds really cool. We look at the job description and we start going down the qualifications. Yeah, I got that. Yeah, no, yeah, no, yeah. Okay, I don't meet them all. I'm taking myself out of the running. Women tend to believe that they don't have 90+% of those qualifications on the job description, they don't stand a chance. We self-select, we pull ourselves out. You know what the ratio is for guys? Take a guess.
25.
25%. If they have 25%, sometimes even less of those qualifications, man, I'm going for it. So just think about that one limiting belief. If I don't meet every, or darn near every credential, every qualification on a job description, I ain't ready for the job. That one limiting belief, God knows how many hundreds of thousands of women are self-selecting, opting out before they even give themselves a chance. Okay, so that is step number one, is recognize that your own paradigm may be your greatest challenge right now. What else can you do? Well, the second thing is you can open your mind to other options. Understand there is more than one way to go at something. There's never just a single path to your aspirations. Sometimes we stay stuck because we actually haven't given ourselves the option to step into our power through another route. So part of this opening your mind to other options also means you remain open to the fact that wisdom and guidance can come to you from pretty unlikely sources. I mean, if you actually think about it, a hypnotist who never hypnotized me is the one who taught me that I had bought into what other people had to say, which wasn't necessarily the truth for me. So what really is truth? What really is the path? Is it only one way? They call it conventional wisdom for a reason. It's conventional, it's standard. Leaders often reject that. They find their own way, their own path. So that second piece is just be open to other options. You know, great story. In December of this past year, I did a story for Forbes on Shelley Lazarus. How many people know Shelley? A number of you. Okay, so chairman of Ogilvy Worldwide, world's largest advertising agency. Well, Shelley was told early on that she would never be CEO unless she relocated overseas and ran an international operation. Well, she has a long-term marriage, 40+ years. Her husband's a pediatrician, lives practices right near their home, and at the time she had 4 small kids. And she said, you know what? I'm not going to do it. So she decided to go about it a different way. She said, I want to pick up a handful of global clients. I want to run their full lines of business here in New York. And so she did, and she traveled like a maniac. I mean, gone a lot of the time, and when she was home, she was on conference calls to the dead of night, the wee hours of the morning. It was not easy. But in the end, what happened? She got the experience she needed, and she got the CEO job. Her way. Her way. So think about that. If Shelley had just accepted the lines that people drew around her, she would have thrown in the towel at the very beginning, right? She would have said, okay, here's my belief system. If I don't go over there and run an operation, I will not be CEO, because that's what they told me. So by refusing to accept that conventional wisdom and saying, you know what, I'm going to find another way, she did. And she got the CEO job, and then she got the chairman job, and pretty amazing story. So if you have certain beliefs, certain limiting beliefs about cause and effect, that you need to be, do, or have something in order to get what you want, I have a question. Who says so? Now, think about options. Yours. Okay, so that's simple lesson number 1. Let go of those limiting beliefs that keep you stuck in place. Number 2 is make choices that are lined up with who you are. And that means getting clear on who you are in the first place. So from the time I was, I don't know, this tall, I wanted to be a TV news reporter. We would have these neighborhood block party events. And instead of like playing hide and seek with the other kids, I would walk around with a tape recorder, interviewing people. The kids would be playing hide and seek, and I'd be like running through the woods, trying to find somebody. Jimmy, do you have any idea where Sally's hiding? Speak into the microphone. I would chase the mailman down the street. I'd be like, Mr. Davis, what happens if the milk goes sour? Do people get their money back? You know, it was crazy. I like grilled everybody in the neighborhood, and as bad as that was, I was so much worse at home, and Mom, I am so sorry. I used to chase her down the hallway, and I'd be like, Mom, wait a second, can you comment on the disappearance of the maple walnut ice cream? I knew I was the one who ate it, I just wanted to bust her chops. But I don't know, you know, pain in the neck or not, I had this dream, and it just wouldn't quit. So I went at it through high school, college, internships and stringer jobs. Then I got my big break. I got a job at the NBC affiliate in Boston. And man, I was in my heaven, truly. And then to put the icing on the cake came the biggest story of the decade. So a local teacher, her name was Krista McAuliffe, was chosen to be the first private citizen to go up on the Space Shuttle Challenger. I can hear some of you remember the event. Well, Krista lived and worked inside our station's viewership range. So have some wine. Anybody else for some wine? So our station became the epicenter of coverage. we were the feeder. You know how news organizations work? They feed the world. We became the epicenter of coverage, so the whole world was watching. So before launch, we're doing all these exclusives with Krista. She's this local celebrity for sure, national celebrity actually.
Does she have kids?
She had kids.
Oh.
Yeah.
And of course,
her
the
house is a museum now.
quintessential elementary school teacher. Really big smile. Remember her smile?
Yeah.
Bigger heart, trust me. Bigger heart. Amazing woman. So anyway, launch day comes, and we're all in the newsroom, and we're gathered around these huge monitors, and we watch the Challenger take off. Less than 2 minutes after launch, the Challenger explodes. It literally disintegrates. Right there before our eyes, I'm sure a number of you were watching, right there on the screen, with Krista and 6 other astronauts on board. It was the greatest tragedy, still is, in the history of the space program. At first, the newsroom is dead silent. It's frozen. And then it erupts in this giddy, gleeful chaos. You know, it's so hard to describe the feeling in that moment. It was like, it was happy, it was a celebration. You guys have to remember, this is a news organization, and what just started out as a really big story in that moment became a colossal story. Colossal. So the news director immediately springs into action and starts doling out the assignments. He turns to one person and says, I want you to camp outside the school. I want you to get the students grieving. You track down her best friend. See if you can get an interview. Remember, we want raw. We want raw emotion. And then he turned to me and he said, I want you to find the family. I want you to find her parents. I want you to find her husband. I want you to find her kids. I want you to find her family and get tears on tape. You got me? Tears on tape. And then I will never forget this for as long as I live. He grabbed me by the shoulders and he looked me square in the eye. And he said, this story can make you. So I hop into the news van and off we go. And I feel this gnawing in my stomach, and I'm thinking, nervous energy. So, all right, you have to try to get the image here, okay? So we are like hiding in bushes with cameras sticking out, and we are teetering up on milk crates so we can get cameras in windows that we can't reach, because we had to get the tears. The school was barricaded. They had grief counselors in there with the kids. But we had to get the tears. Close to the press, but we had to get the tears. Deep inside, I felt like I had crossed a line. It was a line I didn't even know existed for me until that very moment. But that feeling of wrongdoing was so visceral. I have to tell you, I felt like I was selling out. But I went at it. I went at it like I always did, and I got those tears. So I got back to Boston, and I got a promotion. And then I quit. Walking away from something that I loved very much, a dream, was one of the hardest things that I have ever done. But that voice deep inside, it was so loud, it was so insistent, wouldn't take no for an answer. Back then, I had no idea what core values were, but I learned the hard way what it was like to be doing a job that was at odds with them. It became a life-changing lesson about the importance of knowing yourself well enough to make good career choices, and let's face it, good life choices, right? That are in line with who you are as a person. I wanted to be a reporter. I got there. The hard part was realizing that it just wasn't me. Have you ever been in that kind of a situation where you were doing something and you thought, God, this just isn't me? Show of hands, has anybody been there? A lot of us have been there. How does it feel? How does it feel when you're in that spot?
Wrong.
Wrong. How does it feel?
Dirty.
Dirty.
Out-of-body experience.
An out-of-body experience. It's paralyzing. It's suffocating. The incongruity, just out of body. I'm here as me, and somehow I'm over here doing this. How can that be? Effectively navigating our career and leadership journeys begins first with a journey inside. To get clear on what it is that makes you, you. Wonderful, unique you. Yes, I am talking about your core values, okay, so what matters most to you. I'm talking about your strengths, what you're naturally excellent at. I'm talking about your passion, what lights you up. And I'm talking about your vision, what it is you really want. Women have such a hard time naming that one. You take it together, and this is the core of who you are, and I promise you, this is where your greatest personal power lies. When you do the work to get clear on those things, and then you take steps to line up your life and your career to be in harmony with those things, it's stunning what it does. The level of satisfaction, the level of success, the level of fulfillment that you can achieve, it's really stunning. But you know what's interesting is how few people have actually done that work. We have a program at the Center for Creative Leadership called Leadership at the Peak. Has anybody heard of it? No. It's a program just for C-suite. So people who have achieved that level, and they go off in Colorado for a week, just 10 people in a group, and it's this really intense leadership development experience. And it's amazing how almost to a person, they express this dissonance, this sort of distant gnawing where they feel like something's out of whack and they can't put their finger on it. This is, the pinnacle of their careers. And so we start asking the questions, of course, well, what are your core values? Well, what are your strengths? Eyes glaze over, and they start guessing. And they start guessing. And you think, oh my God. Even at that level, flying blind. Because that's what it is. When you don't know yourself, how can you make really good decisions about yourself? Momentum takes over, and we all have been there. You just glide along, and before you know it, you wake up and you're 55, and you're going, whoa, how did I get here? Wasn't necessarily a conscious choice every step of the way. So it's important, and it's hard work. But when you do the work, the payoff is just amazing. So I want to ask you all 4 questions. And I want you to be really honest with yourselves. Do I know what my top 5 core values are? Do I know what my core strengths are? Do I know what lights me up? Can I put a name to that passion? And do I have a written vision for my life? The embodiment of what I want. If you ladies are like most, you've answered no to most or all of those questions, and you are so not alone. And the good news is, you're just some work away from getting amazing clarity and direction, answers to questions that may be plaguing you right now. So if in fact you guys would like to talk a little bit more about how to get at some of those answers, then we can revisit this when we get down to our interactive dialogue at the end. Okay, so second simple truth is make choices that are aligned with who you are, and that means knowing who you are to begin with. Okay. So the third simple truth I'd like to share with you this evening is the importance of combining your intellect and your intuition in order to step into your power and stay there. So fairly early on in my career, I became the first woman at Specialty Materials, Inc. to serve on the president's staff, a member of the executive leadership team. And every year, these mucky-mucks from corporate would come in for this annual business review, and it was a really big deal. I will never forget my first one. So here I am. I'm newly promoted to this position. I'm still trying to establish myself with the leadership team. And we're all in this conference room planning for this meeting. So imagine 8 people, executive leadership team, sitting around an open conference table. So the boss, Dr. Paul Hoffman, remember him? He starts going around assigning the responsibilities. So he says, Joe, I'd like you to take him through the financials. Stan, walk him through the 5-year strategic plan. Mike, you're going to do a tour of the R&D facility. So it goes around and around and around, and he comes to me. And he says, okay, and Susan, you're in charge of the food. Oh. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, he wants me to be the coffee lady? The coffee lady? I was mortified, devastated. I mean, I just froze in place. I had no idea how to react because on the one hand, wanted to be a good team player, right? Respectful of my boss's wishes. But at the most intuitive level, I knew this was not good. And my mind agreed. Here's what I was thinking. I was thinking, okay, my boss does not respect or value me. My new peers would never take me seriously. I was DOA. I was dead on arrival. My intellect and my intuition were in complete agreement on this, and they were like screaming at me to do something. What that was, hadn't a clue. I had no idea. So I went home that night and I talked with my dad. And, you know, he was like so matter of fact about the whole thing. It infuriated me. And he sort of looked at me like, duh. And he said, well, we'll just go back and get another job. Well, at first I thought he meant quit the company and get another job. Like, that was practical. But actually what he meant was go back and renegotiate another role for the meeting. Really? I mean, Dr. Hoffman had given me an assignment, right? Who was I to challenge it, right?